Welcome to this online lecture for Modern Latin America. Today we are going to discuss the development of Spain's colonial empire. To understand this colonial empire, I have a number of terms that you should be able to identify by the time you get to the last slide. So anyway, let's get to it. The map at the right shows Spain's colonial empire in the year 1600. That empire stretched from Oregon in the American Northwest all the way to south-central South America. In addition to increasing Spanish power, Spain's empire made the mother country rich. Most of those riches came from the mining of silver and gold. Spain, in fact, hit upon two of America's richest deposits of gold and silver. Those spots were at Zacatecas in central Mexico and Potosi in Peru. Spain controlled all wealth produced by its colonies. This is very different from England's colonies to the north. There, individuals got to keep most of the wealth produced by the colony. Sure, the mother country occasionally took its share in taxes, but most of the time clever English colonists could evade those taxes. Not so in Spanish America. There, the Spanish crown took 20% of all wealth produced by the colony. This tax was called the Royal Fifth, and it helps us to understand the culture of the Spanish colonies that developed. To ensure that the Royal Fifth was collected, Spain established two vast colonies: the Viceroyalty of New Spain, which today is Mexico, Central America, and a large chunk of the United States, and the Viceroyalty of Peru, which today is the nation of Peru, plus a sizable chunk of Chile. Why Viceroyalty? Well, let's break it down. What does it sound like to you? Viceroyalty, or Vice-King. In short, the Viceroy was the king's direct representative in his colonies, and he ruled like a king because only the king could overrule him. That was unlikely because the king was all the way back in Spain. In other words, power in Spanish America was highly centralized. It radiated from the Viceroy and from his closest advisors. These people, the people, I should say, of Spain's colonial empire, had almost no say. The Viceroy system was an efficient way to collect colonial wealth, so in 1717 another Viceroyalty was established, the Viceroyalty of New Granada. Today that Viceroyalty is Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador. Then, in 1776, they established the Viceroyalty of La Plata, which is Argentina and Bolivia. After the Viceroyalty, the second most important institution in Spanish America was the Catholic Church. Like the Viceroy system, the Church in Spanish America was highly centralized. In this case, power came from Rome rather than from the king. Nevertheless, the Church in Spanish America was organized parallel to the Viceroys. In other words, if you had a Viceroy of New Spain, you also had an Archbishop of New Spain. If you had a Viceroy of Peru, you also had an Archbishop of Peru, and so on, and so on, and so forth. Centralizing so much power in the hands of the Viceroy and the Archbishop also affected the culture of Spanish America. Soon, two broad cultures developed, one in the city and one on the fringe. The culture of the city was largely European. That's because Spanish language and Spanish culture would dominate in the city. For example, in Mexico City, this was the place where European culture would dominate. Spanish was the dominant language, and Spanish culture from the church to the food was the rule. The reason that the cities were the center of Spanish culture should come as no surprise. The city was where power lay. It was the center of government. The Viceroy might live there, or government officials. It was also the seat of religion. Where power took root, wealth was not far behind. The wealthiest individuals in Spanish America lived in its largest cities. In contrast, there were the fringe areas, in other words, those regions far from the city. The fringe remained largely ignored and unimportant as far as the elites in Spanish America were concerned. Because the fringe was largely ignored, there was less wealth and fewer Europeans. But there was also a plus side to this as well. Fewer Europeans meant less interference from Spain, and less interference meant that large parts of the fringe remained largely independent.